In today's video, I'm having a look at the Australia-New Zealand possible opening of barriers for trade, Apple, earnings updates as well for you from across the board on a few of the major companies that we're seeing, and I have a little bit of a trade to show you on WTI. Hello and welcome to another acysecurities market update. My name is Alistair Schultz and I'm going to be your host through today's trading journey. The first thing on the cards, as always, is a bit of a COVID-19 update. We have gone past 3.2 million infections globally. The death rate has risen again, and the amount of recovered patients has edged even closer to the 1 million mark. It is still behind what we're seeing in terms of infections on a daily basis, but hopefully we'll see some overlap at some stage in the near future. Now, the US has actually reported that they have had a reduction in the amount of cases they've had per day in comparison to what their average has been. The average so far has been about 3% increases. Now we've got a 1.2, so that's definitely positive. To put that in a metric, that is still a pretty big number, with the US having the most infections around the world, with over 1 million cases just in the US alone. So naturally, that's obviously still going to be a problem, but at least we are starting to see some of those cases come down. In addition to that, Boris Johnson believes that the UK has gone past the peak of infections. So that is another considerable piece of information to consider. Naturally, he's a politician and not a medical professional, but it might be good news to come for the UK. Now, the other part of all this COVID-19 stuff at the moment is that obviously Australia and New Zealand have had a very low number, been able to sort of fight off the growing cases that the rest of the world hasn't. They do have a much flatter curve, and the trajectory of which has been partially responsible because they have closed all the borders. Now, they are looking at coming out of lockdown. New Zealand has already entered into phase 1. I believe Australia is entering into phase 1 today, and it will be a tentative thing and going along the way. But there has been talk about opening up the borders between Australia and New Zealand to allow for trade, tourism and travel. This is very important for New Zealand because trade and travel and obviously tourism all comes into one place, and a lot of it does actually come from Australia, so that'll be important for their GDP figures. Australia as well, because New Zealand is Australia's 11th largest trading partner, but over the next sort of 6 months or so it might end up being that we are both each other's largest trading partners for the time being. Certainly something to keep our eyes on, and it might be good for Australian and New Zealand sort of stocks and entities that might already be trading there. Now, the next thing to sort of have a look at that is also based off Australia a little bit, is that Apple and Tim Cook has said that they're considering opening stores over the next 1 or 2 weeks, likely to be in Austria and Australia to start off with. Naturally, they're not aiming to be the first company to open stores in each country, and that he will be looking at the cases per day and what might be going on with lockdowns to assess whether he'll be opening stores in those particular companies. So that might be a good indicator of Apple starting to pick up on track. However, having a look at this report that we've got here from earnings season, we have a number of companies that have said that they're not really interested in giving out their earnings reports or expectations, which Apple is one of them. So that's going to be a problem because they haven't issued a forecast for earnings season, and moving forward that doesn't look quite so friendly. And you can remember the other day I was talking about some companies who, instead of giving an earnings forecast, were going to start releasing a monthly one instead. So that could have actually helped save a lot of woe, but nonetheless we'll have to see what sort of happens from here on out. Now, Amazon have already reported they are expecting possible losses in the second quarter. We've also had Shell cut dividends, which this is a big thing because usually in times of crisis, we see a lot of people use Shell and oil-based companies as a haven to sort of get away and move their stocks into it to sort of ride out the storm, much like you would get when you have in currencies where you would move towards gold or perhaps even the yen. So in this instance, it's just not worked. They've moved their funds there, and then now they've been told they're going to get a dividend cut. So that is just unprecedented and not expected. So naturally, we're going to see some declines around there at some stage, purely because of the dividend cut. Now, the next one to have a look at is actually Tesla. Now, Tesla has reported really good earnings, which to some might look a little bit unbelievable. And in question, you'll be able to see just here, I've got a tweet from David Einhorn, who happens to be an accounting specialist. And he has sort of questioned the accounts receivable for Tesla and has put it out on Twitter, that the email that he sent to Elon Musk and a couple of others. At the announcement of this tweet, we saw stock prices basically come down 10% for Tesla, which is a very interesting factor. They are saying, you can check it out and have a read of his tweet, but effectively he's calling Elon out saying, well, where is the funds, who is buying at the moment, and who is this company that is suspiciously anonymous for purchasing a whole stack of your cars. So we are seeing a bit of information come through that. It would be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. And it is quite a funny email or tweet if you want to have a read of it, but either way, definitely worth having a look into. Regardless of that fact, we've seen Tesla prices come down 10%. So this might leave us with a good opportunity. So let's have a look over the next little while and see how Elon responds. And we might be able to find some good opportunities for trade. Now, the next one to have a look at here, I've got a chart of WTI up on the screen for you now, and you'll be able to see on the bottom right-hand side, I've got a little circle on just here. And this is a double bottom that I have identified overnight on a daily chart, and it has obviously played out to where we would hope it to expect with a nice tidy amount of profit on it. I have since closed the trade purely because I don't feel comfortable with it at the moment with all the fluctuations that we're seeing in oil prices. I went in a little bit soft, and I sort of waited until I hit a 1-to-1 ratio for a take profit. Any further than that, I probably just don't feel comfortable letting it go, and there's not really a good place to be putting a stop loss behind it at the moment because you can have such volatile movements, especially when we're getting negative oil prices, right? So keeping an eye on that, playing it a little bit safer than usual. Now, for the news ahead, we actually have a whole stack of bank holidays today. The first of which is China, then we have Switzerland, we also have France and Italy. And all of them combined might impact on the markets a little bit. There isn't a lot of news coming out today. It's all very minor sort of stuff. The only thing in question that I had to have a look at, and it gets its own slide today, is that we have US ISM manufacturing for their purchasing manufacturing index at about 1 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So please feel free to check that out. Have a look at some of the news that might be coming out. There's not a huge amount of it. You're able to check it out on FinLogics if you would like. And of course, if you want to get in contact with me about anything I've said today, or maybe in other videos, maybe even in last night's webinar, feel free to shoot me an email at talktoal@acy.com. And of course, like and subscribe to the video so you can get more great content from me and ACY Securities in the future. Have a great trading day ahead.